Hey guys, Rambo here, and I'm back with a new video, and really I've been kind of reflective recently. And if you guys saw that I posted the Bob Berry video yesterday, and it already has 57 views, so thank you very much about that. I don't really care about that the message was real, first of all. If you guys are wondering, yes, it was real, I really didn't mean all of that. And really, let me just put it like this. I've been really reflective recently, and I just felt like making a series called Tribute Week. Or not Tribute Week, but tributes, you know? You know, like where I'm tributing my heroes in, well, flat out anything, you know? I mean, it's a pretty small world out there, and, you know, I'm just saying right now that, well, I'm just saying that, well, I guess I should do it. People, let's get an education. A couple weeks, or today, a couple years ago, or 8 years ago, I believe. Or, well, actually, it's 7 years ago. Got that wrong. But, we lost a genius in comedy. And yeah, I know you guys I know. I love stand-up comedy. Let's just get that out of the way. I love stand-up comedy. It's really funny. I think it's better than, well, most comedy movies, you know. It's just, you know, comedy movies have run a bit dry. I mean, there's some that kind of fill in the cracks, but mostly they're entirely, should I say, to quote the nostalgia critic, pointless. And really today is the day that we should be remembering George Carlin. Yes, I heard you. You heard me correctly. George Carlin. 7 years ago today, he died. He was 71 years old, and I believe he died from a heart attack. He had a bunch of heart problems during his life. And it is very sad when you get the looks at it, but, I mean, you know, people die. And you know how I already feel about that, but, and I bet you guys are wondering why I'm talking about Carlin. I made a video about Carlin a couple months ago, and it's kind of just my talk about why I like him so much, and I'm kind of gonna return to that. Why I like Carlin so much. Really, I like him really because he tested the boundaries. He really did. He tested boundaries on, if you remember the 7 Dirty Words, he talked about TV censorship. He was always very outspoken about what he believed in, and he always did it through comedy. And he always talked about things. He was very dead serious when he did his comedy, and that's why I like him so much. Really, his comedy is so, I mean, it is funny, but it's more or less serious funny. You know, he wants people to know about this. He wants people to know that people are still, you know, people. He always addresses the issue how it is. He doesn't even. I don't remember him ever. I don't remember him ever bull crapping anyone. I remember him just. He always said how it was. You know, I really love how he did it. And my mom was watching a radio show the other day, and it had one of his jokes on there, and it was so funny. And it was about nature. And if you guys have heard the joke, it is really funny, and I really love it. And, you know, George is just standing there on the stage, and he's just, you know, he's walking around the stage, you know, he's walking how he usually does. You know, he has that ponytail. It's really funny. And he's just like, you know, guys, here's why, you know. And he's just like, here's what the science is. It's really funny. You know, my favorite part, personally, is when he says, it just disappears. You know, I really love that. But back to that. It's really funny. And it's just something that I know that I'll love. It's just really funny. And he inspired others. He inspired other comedians because really, George Carlin was so much more different than most comedians. Now, I mean, a lot of comedians will go up on stage and you can act like George Carlin. You can say all the things he said, but you can't say it the way he did. It just can't be done. And really, if I could put up the more articulate argument, I mean, he really did make sense to other people. He was kind of like the South Park of that day. He kind of showed a mirror and he's just like, this is what you people are acting like. You know, he always talked about, TV advertisements. He always talked about psychology, you know. He always talked about, things that, people didn't really talk about back in that day. You know, and he talked about things that people just didn't talk about. It's just, you know, they didn't, dang it, I died, but, okay. But, he talked about things that no one ever dreamed of talking about. I mean, yeah, there was Richard Pryor, and he talked about stuff. Really, I could say that George Carlin was one of the revolutionaries of how people look at modern-day comedy. And he was. I'm not saying they're lying. I think he is one of the best comedians of the 20th and early 21st century. I think he was a very much influential comedian of his time. So I'm not saying he isn't, but I'm saying, you know, I'm not just going to say that because that's probably what most people would say. Personally, I mean, he is one of my heroes. He made me look at the world a lot more differently than I ever dreamed of looking at it. You know, I never ever dreamed of looking at the world the way it. I've never dreamed of looking at the world the way that George Carlin did. You know, I never dreamed of looking at the. Okay, yeah. I never dreamed of looking at the world the way George Carlin did. And it's just, he was so good at making people go like, wow, look how stupid we are, you know? It's just so, I mean, it's not normal to look at people like that, you know? I mean, people who, let me put it this way. It's very hard to put into retrospect how much people respect this man, you know? It's very hard to talk about how much people respect this man, and I mean it. Personally, I mean, I'm just saying, he made us look at the world differently, you know? I'm not saying he was one of those scholars, but he made it look for us in a comedic, funny way. He really did. He made us look at it in a funny, dirty, comedic way. He really wanted us to look at it in that way. He really wanted us to look at it in the way he looked at it, which was, a lot of this world, I don't know what to trust in this planet. Because he once said, the first thing that I'll put on my list of things to do is to not trust my government. Not to try and get political, but he did talk about a lot of political issues. Then again, in a really funny way. Now, I know a lot of comedians do this, but to be an influential person, you have to say it in a different way than everybody else. Now, I don't plan on becoming a comedian when I grow up. I mean, I don't know if I'd be good or not. I probably could be, but I mean, George Carlin, you know, he never took crap from anybody. He never said crap to anybody. All he said is what he thought to be the truth, and he really meant that. He always said things that he thought were right, you know. He always, in every interview I've seen him in, you know, he is a very, very bright guy, you know. I really would have been interested in meeting him, you know. Now, I'm a 14-year-old, and I don't know, he's just like, I don't think you should be watching. I mean, I bet $10 if he was still alive today and I met him and I told him that I think his comedy is hilarious and that he's made me look at the world in such a different view, he'd probably just tell me, wow, aren't you kind of young to watch this stuff? And I mean, yeah, I guess I am, but I mean, come on, dude. It's you can't judge in this world, and that's just what I like, and it's pretty funny. And you gotta listen to vulgar stuff when you're older, when you're younger. You gotta listen to it sometimes. Like, I mean, I went to a place yesterday. Those people were cursing like Goodfellas, man. I mean, Jesus. But man, George Carlin, dude, he was just one of the best. He really was. He was one of the best. He was up there with fucking Richard Pryor, who's just as funny. Don't get me wrong. I love Richard Pryor. He is hilarious, and I think his comedy is just as influential as Carlin's was. But I mean, then again, I really loved his views. Okay, sorry for voice crack. I really love his views on Freudian psychology, which is pretty much normal psychology nowadays. And, he always talked about, like, wars and stuff. It's something that no one, he always talked about stuff that no one ever dreamed of talking about, and, I mean, he just talked about stuff that no one did, he talked about, I've already said that, but really, man, George Carlin was probably one of the best comedians. Man, same thing with, and he is one of my heroes, and he probably always will be, and I freaking love George Carlin. Man, and no one, in my opinion, will ever talk about psychology or psychiatry as much as he did. I really doubt that they'll ever talk about it the way he did. And really, man, I know he'd still be alive today, he'd just be more slower, because I've seen his last, I saw the last one before he died, his last comedy hour, or comedy special, and it was kind of a send-off. It was really funny, and it was one of his best. And, I mean, if you're gonna send off real quick, now, I mean, I don't know if, again, back to the death situation, I don't know if George expected to die. Now, he did have a history of cardiac, what I've read about him, he did have a history of cardiac problems and stuff. But not ever do I remember that he, I don't remember that he ever, expected to die. He probably did at some points, but, he did talk about drug use sometimes in his comedy specials, he was a funny guy. I'm going to end off the video saying this, because it's kind of dragging off a bit too long, but not really, but I'm probably going to say the same things. Really, George Carlin, I have no idea what to say about him. I really have no idea, rather than he is one of my heroes, always will be, and he's just someone who changed comedy from what it was. He always, no one will ever be like George Carlin, in my opinion. And next part, and really I've been reflective, and I really wanted, and since George Carlin's, his death anniversary actually is today, so I mean, it really is just, it is a sad death. It really is sad. And George Carlin, man, you were a comedic genius. You are loved, still are, and you probably will be loved for generations to come. And for that, I will forever be grateful for your comedy. And you enlightened us on places that we never talked about. And no one will ever probably talk about the same way that you did. Well, I don't know where he is. I didn't know exactly what he believed in. I know he did criticize a lot of organized religion, but I'm not getting into that. But wherever he is, I don't know, but he's probably going to make people laugh. I always say that, wherever he is, people always say that wherever he is. George, man, wherever you are, keep doing what you're doing. You gotta make a joy out of everything, you know? I mean, he always did. You know, he always made a joy out of everything. You know, he always made a joy out of advertisements. He always made a joy out of wars. You know, he always made people laugh about it. So, I mean, much love to George Carlin. And he is really one of my heroes. Talk to you guys later. My name is You Should Know's Rambo. Goodbye.